Hi everyone, my name is Chelsea. Welcome to Little Mountain Ranch. Welcome to my kitchen. I'm really happy to have you here with me today, and I hope you are all doing well. I am getting ready to make some chili and some cornbread, and then we are going to go outside and do a little bit of work in my greenhouse, getting my onions prepared to come inside and go into storage. My eldest daughter and my mother-in-law are both coming out today, so I want to try to get dinner made and done nice and early this morning so that I'm not busy doing that when they are here. We are going to make the recipe for chili out of my cookbook. And this is my mom's recipe, so I've called it Nana's Chili in my cookbook here. It is an awesome recipe, and I'm going to walk you through step by step how to make it today. Pre-order for the cookbook has closed, and those are going to be mailed out to you this month for those of you that ordered. We are going to be opening up pre-sales again. We haven't decided a date yet. Right now, we're just trying to figure out the logistics and timing for making sure we can get cookbooks to you as quickly as possible. So just hang tight. We will have another pre-sale available for you really soon. And if you do want to be notified when I do a pre-sale early, and oftentimes I offer discounts, you can sign up for my newsletter, and the link for that will be in the pinned comment and in the show notes below. So the first thing that we need to do is find the recipe again, because I just closed the cookbook. You'd think I would have this recipe memorized by now, but I don't. I have 2 pounds of ground beef over here that we're going to get fried up on the stove. So once this beef has browned, we're going to add 6 cloves of garlic smashed and 2 onions chopped. I already have the garlic and the onions ready to go over here. The next thing that we need to do is to rinse off some kidney beans in the sink. And I just remembered that I actually have my sink filled with eggs that I hard boiled this morning that need to be peeled. I'll put those on the table over here. And I'm just going to have those in the fridge so that we can grab them for easy snacks throughout the day. But I also need my strainer back from those eggs. So we'll dump those eggs into a bowl and we'll rinse this out. So we're going to use 2 quarts of kidney beans. While that is cooking, I am going to put together a quick batch of cornbread and have a couple of our ingredients already set out over here. I am terrible at getting all my ingredients laid out first before I pull out the camera, because oftentimes I'm sharing with you what I'm just actually doing in my kitchen, and I'm not somebody who generally lays out all my ingredients first. Definitely a good practice to do, makes things a lot more efficient, but I normally just grab things as I need them when I'm cooking in the kitchen myself without the camera present. So let's see here. We need 4 cups of flour. We need 2 cups of cornmeal. Exactly 2 cups. That was lucky. And this is a sweet cornbread. So it calls for 2 cups of sugar, but I'm just gonna do around 1.5. 3 tablespoons of baking powder. It calls for 2 teaspoons of salt, but I am just going to add 1.5. I usually cut down on the amount of salt when I'm doubling or tripling recipes than it calls for, because I find it's just way too salty otherwise. So we have our dry ingredients mixed together over here, and I need to melt some butter. How much butter do I need here? I need 1 cup of melted butter, and I only have around half a cup there, so I'll have to grab another block out of the freezer. We're going to add our onions and our garlic over to our ground beef because it's all browned now. So we have 2 onions and 6 cloves of garlic. And this is obviously a really big batch, but this freezes well and it stores in the fridge for a while so you can have leftovers. So we're gonna add 2 quarts of tomatoes, 1 quart of plain tomato sauce. And this recipe also calls for 1 8-ounce tin of tomato paste, which I currently do not have, so I am going to be omitting that. But my sauces are pretty thick here, so I don't need them. I don't need it for thickening the chili. And then to this, we are going to add our kidney beans that we rinsed, drained, and rinsed. And we are also going to add a bunch of red and green tomatoes, 1 of each. In this case, these are chopped and frozen peppers from this summer. Okay, I'm going to throw in 2 tablespoons of sugar. So this recipe has quite a lot of chili in it. So this depends upon your own taste preferences. So it calls for 6 tablespoons, and I put in around 3 tablespoons. So it's not too spicy for us. We're going to add 2 teaspoons of cumin. Also calls for a lot of chili flakes. I just use a pinch. A little bit of dried oregano, just around a teaspoon. And a teaspoon of cocoa powder, which is kind of the secret ingredient to this recipe. Makes it nice and rich. And a little bit of chopped celery. And now we're just gonna let that cook down for a little bit, and then we'll just let it sit and simmer for a few hours. Look at how delicious that looks. Such a yummy chili. We have our butter melted over here for our cornbread. So into our dry ingredients, we are going to add our butter, melted butter, a cup of oil, in this case avocado oil, 2.5 cups of milk, and we need 6 eggs. Okay, so we have our eggs all added. Now just give everything a good mix. And then this is going to bake for 45 minutes to an hour at a 350 degree, oven. Math is fun and it's good for you. Brain, good learning. Okay, now that we have that baking in the oven, our chili is done. We get to go outside, and I am going to show you how I am preparing my onions to bring them inside into storage. I also am planning on doing a bunch of freeze drying with my onions and also making French onion soup, but we won't be doing the French onion soup today because I need a bunch of beef bones to make beef broth, which is the base for the French onion soup. And I won't have those for another week or so, maybe 2 weeks, because we just had a beef done and it's hanging. We like to hang our beef for at least 2 weeks. So we won't have those bones until that time. So that's when we'll get into the French onion soup. But it is starting to get quite cold out at night, and I don't want to risk freezing my onions. So I do need to get them, I need to kind of hurry along the process, the curing process that's happening with the onions right now. So I'm going to show you how I have started doing that. Down there, it's just an experiment. I haven't done it this way before. Normally my onions are pulled and well cured by this point and actually into storage, but they were late this year and I didn't end up getting them all picked until probably 2 weeks ago now at this point. And even though our daytime temperatures are nice and warm, nighttime is definitely getting cold. We've had below freezing a couple of nights now, which isn't good for onions because they will be ruined if they freeze. So let's do that right now. I'm just going to grab a hat. We're going to be moving from baseball cap season to toque season here in no time. Whenever I say the word toque, a lot of people don't know what I'm talking about because I learned through making YouTube videos that toque is mostly a Canadian word, and what it means is like a winter knitted hat. And yeah, so anyway, I pretty much wear one all winter long, sometimes even in the house because I don't like being cold and they keep me nice and warm. But we're just now at the point where I'm wearing one in the morning when I go outside when it's early. It's warmed up a bit now, so I can just wear my baseball hat. Our asters are just about ready to bloom here. Everything is looking very autumn-esque. The smell of autumn smells so good. For those of you that are new, this is my little greenhouse here. This is a very multi-purpose building. In the spring, I bring all my seedlings from my grow room in the house where I start them, and I bring them out to this little greenhouse. And usually because it's cold in the spring here, I have a couple of heaters in here, and then I usually put plastic over and tuck my little sensitive seedlings in underneath, and that's been working really well for me for years now. And it usually stays really full in here until the end of May when most of the seedlings go out into the garden. It's packed full, both shelves full to the top, sometimes underneath as well. And usually this is used for storage in the summertime. And then when it comes time to curing my onions, it transforms into an onion curing space. And then during the winter time, it kind of goes back to a storage space again. So it's a really multi-purpose building. When we first built this, I think it was one of the first videos we ever made for YouTube. We had it actually as a greenhouse. So it was full, just like my high tunnel is, but obviously on a much smaller scale. And I quickly outgrew this space as far as the need for a larger greenhouse. So that's why we got the high tunnel, but it is still used for a lot for me throughout the year. So let's chat onions. Actually started stringing up some onions here yesterday, but I'll walk you through how I do that. I wanted to show you what I am dealing with. So I have quite a few onions over here that are cured. So how you're gonna know an onion is cured is the skin is going to be very papery, and this part is going to be completely dry. So what you're looking for is this area right here to be totally dry. Once that happens, there's a couple of different ways that you can store them, and we'll talk about that in a second. Okay, let me show you what I am doing to kind of speed along the curing of my onions. So as you can see, we've got lots of drying happening, but there's still quite a bit of green in here, and I'm going to guess it's going to take at least a week, if not two, to completely dry these out. So what I have been doing, and I started on this yesterday, is clipping off the top part so that there's less here that needs to dry out, and I'm hoping this is going to speed things along a little bit. It is possible that by doing this, I am going to lose a little bit of moisture from the onion itself, just because all of these leaves are actually connected to all the rings inside of the onion. But because I have the freeze dryer this year, and anything that starts to turn, I can clean up, chop up, and throw right into the freeze dryer. And if you don't have a freeze dryer, you could do the same thing with a freezer, just freeze them. I'm not that worried about shortening the storage ability of my onion by trimming it off like this in hopes that this is going to speed up the drying, or having them starting to turn because I'm doing that for some reason. Because like I said, if that happens, I have other plans. So these onions here, these are called Red Wing, and they're a really good storage onion. This is the first time I've grown them, but they have an excellent reputation for storage ability. So I am going to be storing the majority of these onions in my cold room in the house. And when we do the big tour of the pantry and the cold room, you'll be able to see that. So this year I have decided to change the way that I'm storing my onions. I've always done some of the onions in the way that I'm going to show you right now, but over the last few years I've been stringing them up and hanging them. I find that when I pull my onions off of these when they're in storage, it just is messy because there's little bits of stuff that falls off onto the ground. Whereas what I am going to be doing today is actually getting my onions prepped and put into just cardboard boxes like this. And all I am doing is cutting my onions off, the ones that are cured, cleaning them off like so, and putting them right in the box. And they will store for a really long time like this. And like I said, I often string my onions up this way, but I also have a few boxes in the pantry, and I haven't found a big difference between these two storage options as far as for how long the onions last. And this way is definitely a lot cleaner because all of the mess stays in the box itself. And if you don't have a cold room, that's totally fine. You can actually, if you have a cool, dark place that you can store them, like in a closet, for instance, that can work just as well for storing onions. You don't want onions to be stored in a really high humidity location, like a root cellar, for instance, because these are just little tiny ones, because they will end up rotting. Okay, so that's the plan for most of the onions, is putting them in boxes like this. And these ones are called Red Wing, and they are supposed to be an excellent storage onion. This is the first time that I've ever grown them. I was really happy with them. The size of them is fabulous. The flavor of them is really good. And like I said, they're supposed to be a really good long-term storage onion. So let's go over here now, and I will show you how you can string up your onions. So I'm just using some yarn for this. You can use twine, anything that you have available. So string like so. Take an onion and we wrap it around like so. And then we're going to, so once we have our onion on, we're going to twist this. So there's a little twist here. Going to grab another onion, take it, wrap it around, and twist again. I'm going to take another onion, wrap it around the opposite side. So basically we're going to go back and forth and twist again. And so on until we get to the top. The nice thing about onions hanging like this is they really look pretty. It's a very beautiful looking thing. Going to have to hustle on this because my mother-in-law is going to be here any minute. Look at how pretty that looks though. The nice thing about doing them this way compared to braiding them is that they're easy to remove from this in comparison to a braid. I find with a braid, you end up having to tug on the whole entire thing, whereas this, you can literally just pull one of these out because they're individually on here. You will get quite a bit of weight on your onions when you do them like this, so make sure that you are using something that's fairly strong so that it doesn't snap. But there, looks like that. It's cute. So you can get a lot more particular about how uniform your beautiful clump of onions is. As you can see, I'm not that concerned about such things, but this does work really well. Like I said though, what I am going to be doing is using these cardboard boxes here and putting my onions right in there. Some of these still have a bit of too much moisture in there. That one's good. The other thing that you can do when you store them is trim off the roots. Do you know what's interesting is all summer, or all spring and summer throughout the gardening season, I've mentioned how difficult of a gardening year it was with the weather, because the weather was just really unpredictable, really, really hot, also really, really cold, late frost in the spring, early frost, or actually no, the frost in August wasn't early. We usually get frost in August, but it was super cold in the spring for an extended period of time, which stunted the growth of a lot of things. And it just felt like a hard summer as far as for growing goes. And even, this wasp. So anyway, what I was saying is that it seemed like it was a really hard year. And I feel like I said that a lot throughout the summertime as far as growing goes. But now that I'm thinking back onto the harvest itself, so yeah, there were definitely things that struggled for sure. Like tomatoes, for instance, definitely struggled. I had way fewer tomatoes out of my high tunnel than I normally get. And we weren't able to eat a lot of fresh tomatoes until well into August. And there's been previous years where we've had tomatoes at the end of June. So it was quite a big difference. It just felt like a hard year. But when I think back on the harvests themselves, so my onions obviously did amazingly well this summer. I only got, I think, around 40 squash, but that's still 40 squash. And they were really good. They were really nice looking squash. And a lot of them cured on the vine, which is really unusual for me. Normally I have to do most of my squash curing up on my deck. So that was positive. The sunflowers this year were glorious, just absolutely beautiful. The broccoli, cauliflower, cabbage, so the brassicas, collard greens, all of those did amazing this year. It was probably one of the best years for brassicas I've ever had. It was a terrible year for pickling cucumbers. Like, I think I probably only canned 10 jars of pickles or something like that. Like, it was really, really, really bad. I actually just kind of gave up on them at a certain point. My root cellar is definitely looking a little bit empty because normally I have it filled with beets, and I didn't even plant very many beets this year. I don't know what happened with that in the spring. My potatoes got planted late, so the harvest on the potatoes was pretty dismal. I actually didn't even plant turnips and rutabagas. I wasn't here for a bit of May and into June very much, and so I was late planting a lot of things. And then also we had a drought this year, so the potatoes just didn't do great. But all in all, when I look at my pantry and see all of the food that I've preserved in there and my freezers and all of that, it was actually not a terrible year. So I could have spent more time talking about what great harvests I was getting than complaining about the fact that it didn't seem like a good year, because now in hindsight, when I look back on it, there was actually a lot of produce that came out of my garden. And one of the things about my garden this year is I just found it so beautiful. It just, every time I went out in it, just where a lot of the volunteer sunflowers came up just looked so gorgeous. And I planted a lot of flowers everywhere, which I'm a firm believer in planting flowers all over your vegetable garden, because it just encourages me anyways to be down in it and enjoying it more. So this year, like the garden most years, there are some things that did absolutely fantastically well and some things that were a total flop. And it's one of the reasons why I like to plant extra, way more than I know I'm going to need, of just about everything, so that if there is a time when it's a bit of a flop like this year, I have extras. So, and then of course I also have the opportunity to be able to go down and buy some of the things that I want to have in my pantry over the winter from other farmers. So all in all, I'm feeling pretty happy and satisfied. And I managed to get most of these cut while I was chatting with you, so that's great. Just a couple more to do up here. And then I really do need to head up to the house because my company is going to be showing up any minute. There, all prepped and ready to hopefully dry really, really fast in the next week so that I can get these inside. Okay, let's head up to the house and check on that cornbread because it should be just about done by now. For those of you that don't love cooking, I cannot encourage you to get your supper done, or at least all of your supper prep done earlier in the morning enough, because it has made cooking for me so much more enjoyable, a little bit less stressful, because I'm always pretty tired by the time it hits 4 o'clock in the evening and it's time to think about making dinner. So I'm really happy to have this supper all done. Cornbread all ready. Where are we gonna put that? My biggest complaint with cornbread is that it's usually really dry. So I thought I would try a new one today that's specifically called Best Super Moist Cornbread. So let's hope it lives up to its name. I know the chili's good because I've had it my whole life. It's good. It's so good. So let's try a bite of the cornbread. That is delicious cornbread. It does have a fair bit of sugar in it, so if sweet cornbread is not your jam, then you probably won't like it, but if you like sweet, this is excellent. I'll make sure I put a link for you. That might be the best cornbread I've ever had. The combination of the cornbread and the chili, my friends, oh my goodness. All right, friends, I just got a text from my daughter saying that she is going to be here in about 20 minutes. So I am going to sign off for today. I hope that you enjoyed today's video and I look forward to seeing you next time. Bye.